Hey everyone, welcome back to Cuff'em and Quote'em. Today is going to be a review video for The Bone-Charred Daughter. I got this book in the Caffeine and Legend book box for October, and I actually had time to read it this time. And I'm really glad I did, because honestly, this is probably one of the best books I've read in a long time. I have so many things I need to talk about. This book was amazing. So I'm going to try to do a spoil-free review. But for real though, guys, I need to talk about this. So if you guys have read this book too, we need to have a discussion because I have questions. Things happened and I was not prepared for the ending. And okay. So, The Bone-Charred Daughter by Andrea Stewart is about a different cast of characters. There are 4 or 5 characters that you kind of follow throughout the book. Each chapter you kind of bounce between the different characters. So there's Lynn, who's the Emperor's daughter, who isn't necessarily the heir to the Emperor because she doesn't have any of her memories. Like, she doesn't remember anything from longer than 3 years ago because of some sickness that came. So she's trying to regain her memories and at the same time learn the bone shard magic that he has. Because the Emperor does magic with the bone shards, and that's how he powers they're called constructs, which are basically things that he makes using bits of other things, and then he brings them to life with the bone shards. So she's trying to figure out, she's trying to figure out who she is and how to work the bone shard magic so she can kind of trick her way into being the heir again. And then there's Jovis, who reminds me a lot of Flynn from Tangled. I had a really hard time not drawing that conclusion, which wasn't a bad thing. I thought Jovis was a great character. He's a pirate smuggler dude who kind of gets like roped up into a whole bunch of crap that he really didn't want anything to do with. And for the most part, most of Jovis's story is him just kind of figuring out what the hell. And he ends up getting roped up into like a rebellion because he's trying to find his missing wife and stuff. And then there's Romani and her girlfriend, I think it's Falui. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the name, but it's her. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name. I'm just going to call her Filet. I'm not really sure if that's right or even close, but that's how it's going to go in my brain. So she's the daughter of the governor of the island, and her girlfriend Romani is trying to get her to like change the way things are done on the island and fix a lot of the policies. There's a bunch of poverty and servitude treatment kind of going on, and so those two are at conflict because one is the heir to the governor's seat and Romani's trying to get her to basically change the entire way her father's done her rule. So that's a complicated dynamic. Also, girlfriends and the fact that they are lesbians have no point in the story. Like, it's not like a plot point, it's just they are, and I love it so much that it's not a big thing. It's just they're in love with each other and they're women, and that's just moving on. It wasn't a thing, it wasn't a plot point, it wasn't a device, it was just is, and it made me so happy that it wasn't turned into some big thing. It was just, that's how life is, and I was so happy about that. And then there's also this other character named Sand, and she's on this other island, still with no memory. She has no idea of, well, at the end you find out who she is, and holy crap, y'all who finished the book, can we talk about that bomb? Because I need to talk about Sand with people that know what's going on, because I don't want to spoil this for guys, but whoa. So Sand doesn't know who she is, doesn't know why she's on this island. She's picking coconuts or mangoes or whatever it is she's picking. And so Sand's journey is not nearly as in depth as the other characters until the very end one. But, and then there's Sand. So those are the characters, the big ones in this story. So the story, none of these characters kind of meet until very close to the end. Their lives are very separate and kind of running parallel throughout the story for a lot of it. So if you're one of those people that don't like reading multiple arcs, you're probably not going to like this at all, because this story is very much a multiple story arc. And at the end, they all kind of, I would say the threads of five kind of merge into like a thread of 2.5. Jovis is like the character that kind of weaves through all the different threads of plot lines. So they do come together at the end a little bit, but if you're not one of those persons that can handle reading and being invested in a bunch of different characters, you're probably not going to like this. I usually don't like it. That is usually something that turns me off right away. If I have to, like, that's why I couldn't finish Game of Thrones, honestly, because there's just too many bloody characters, and I couldn't keep track of them. I couldn't become invested in them because I was hopping around too many times. So I was really worried when I noticed that was the trend with this book. But Andrea Stewart manages to write such amazing and engaging characters that I cared about all of them for the whole time. Which normally isn't how I read. I usually pick a character and root for that character, and the rest of them were just kind of there. No. I care so much about Lynn, and I really want her to succeed, and Jovis is hilarious and snarky, and he just made me laugh all the time. And poor Romani, she deserves better, and Falou, whatever her girlfriend's name is, she just wants to do so good, and Sand is just a giant question mark. I am so invested in all of these characters, and I need to know what happens to them. Andrea Stewart did such an amazing job crafting this complex world that you don't know anything about. You're just as confused as half the characters are about this planet. But you care so much about the characters. They're so engaging and well-rounded and different. Like, at no point did I feel like I was reading the same character with a different name. Every single one of them has a different, unique personality. It's a great job. The other thing that I really loved about this book was I felt like every single time I came to the end of a chapter, some other giant bomb happened. Like, every single chapter was like a cliffhanger ending, and as you go through the book and as you go through the chapters and you start to learn more about the world, something that happens in one character's thread plotline, like I'm reading and you're like, oh, but that happened into this, and then this means over this, and like the stuff starts to like slowly come together and connect in the most magical, subtle way ever, that by the time you don't, guys, I need to talk about this book. I need to talk about it without spoiling it for people. This book was so good. I binged through this book probably, if I were to like time up all the different like reading days, I probably read this in like a day and a half, time-wise. There's all these different characters and they're all going through their own thing, and it's, in the beginning, it doesn't feel like any of it matters to the other characters, and then slowly the author starts to weave in these other little subtle aspects that slowly starts to bring all the plot together in just this super magical, subtle way that you don't notice it's happening until you're like, holy crap, this thing just happened, and that thing was connected to this thing, and holy crap. Like, that's how you read this book. Just, it blew my mind, the amount of, like, every single time the chapter would end, it would end on some cliffhanger where I'm like, oh, I need more information. Speaking of needing more information, that is the one thing I will say a lot of people probably won't like about this book, is the book ends with nothing being solved at all. Maybe one aspect of the plot was solved. Lynn kind of figures out her place a little bit, but like the big overarching problems, like there's two big problems. There's a lot of unanswered questions, but there's two really big plot relevant problems that don't get addressed and aren't really even addressed at all. And I can tell just based on how the thread of the storyline went, those are very clearly going to be book two's problems. So while I'm a little irritated that I don't have any answers to any of my questions at all, I am so invested in this world. I want to read book two to get those answers, and I don't feel like it's a hindrance to me like, there's enough wrap up to enough of the character development that I'm like, okay, there was this, you couldn't have ended this anywhere else unless you wanted to make the book like 100 pages longer. So the ending, while it makes sense, I'm just dying for more. I really need book 2. As for how the magic system works in this book, it's very loosely defined. I would have said before the ending I knew what the rules were, and then the ending happened, and clearly I don't know what any of the rules are. I don't think they do either, but that's a conversation for a spoilery day. So there's the bone shard magic, so, and this isn't a spoiler, you find this out pretty early on in the book when they talk about the festivals or whatever. So the bone shards are literal shards of bone, like when you turn a certain age, there's this big hoopla where they cut that out of your skull and take a little shard of bone out of the back of your skull. There's a whole series of issues with that, but that's where the bone shards are from. And so as the bone shards are being used, that's where it funds the magic that way, and for the constructs, the bone shards were stuck in the constructs, whatever. So that's like loosely defined on how the bone shard magic works. But there's this other, I think they're called the Angala. It's the race of people that were there before the emperor's ancestors took over the islands. And so there's implied magic that they had. It sounds like control of the elements. But that is, like, outside of that, that's very loosely defined. And based on how the book ended, I think that's also going to be book 2's problem. And then there's also Mephi. Little Mephi. Probably is my favorite character, and I don't even know what kind of creature he is. I think he's a sea dragon. Based on the very obvious Asian world that this is based in, which is, side point, so cool. I don't know if there's more Asian fantasy worlds books around. I need to find them, though, because I did not know that Asian influenced fantasy, like, you know how you have the medieval fantasy, which is like European based. I did not know that Asian fantasy based things is a thing I needed in my life, but I need more of that in my life. So if you guys have any good like fantasy books that are Asian based instead of European based, send them my way, because that was the coolest thing. I need more of that. Oh, Mephi. I think he's a sea dragon. I don't actually know if that's what he is. In my brain, he kind of looks like a big otter with horns the size of a mastiff. I don't know. I don't really know in my brain how to reconcile the descriptions we're given of Mephi, but I'm going to call him a mastiff-sized sea otter with horns. And I freaking love him. He is the funniest character on the planet, and I need to know I need more information about what he is, and I want one myself. Mephi, I love Mephi. So, without giving away too much of how the ending is, because I really don't want to spoil it for you guys, because it is, like, the ending happens, and holy crap. Anyway, without giving too much away, this book is totally 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. The writing style was amazing. I wish there were a little bit more descriptions. Like with Mephi, I'm really not sure what he is. And while I understand that we're meant to have that kind of confusion because Jovis has no idea what the hell this creature is, I would like to know a little bit about what he looks like. But that's just a personal thing, and I'm willing to admit that. I did a slightly longer review on my Goodreads page. Feel free to check it out if you want, and if you would like to talk about this book, because I have so many questions. Feel free to comment here on Goodreads, both. I need to talk about this book, people. The ending is holy crap. If you guys want me to do a spoilered review, let me know, and I'll do one where I talk about how the ending is. I just don't want to spoil it for you guys, because yeah, it's good. Like, I kept getting to parts in the book, and my wife was sitting next to me on the couch watching TV, and I'm like focused, right? And then stuff will happen, and I'll like and I can't even talk to her about it because she has no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm just spewing a bunch of words about what happened with Jovis, and she's like, this book was great. I really hope there's more. And it's number one of the Drowning Empire. The Drowning Empire. I think I know what that means. So many questions. Anyway, sorry. Focus. This book was great. I am so excited to see more books from Andrea Stewart. 10 out of 10 recommend. Great book. Also, totally random and has nothing to do with the book review, but we hit 120 subscribers, which blows my mind. I totally started this channel as just something fun to do. And as a way to like flex some creativity a little bit and talk about books. And look, 120 subscribers, who knew? So feel free to subscribe if you are one that isn't of the 120. And let's just continue this little, I don't even know what this is, thing that I'm doing. Comment below what you thought of this book. If you finished it, can I please talk about it with somebody? Because like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you want me to do a spoilered review where I talk about the ending, please let me know. And if enough people want it, then I'll do one of those videos. I will see you guys next time.